basic maintenance, it is essential on your build, whether it's stock or super modified. We're gonna get into basic maintenance on a Focus ST right now. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are doing very basic stuff today. We are doing an oil change. We are doing a transmission fluid change. We're doing some new spark plugs. There are a lot of different things that are involved in basic maintenance, but these are three of the essential items. Now, if you find this video helpful, make sure you like the video so other people that are searching for how to do this stuff can find it easier. And if you want to get into more advanced content, advanced video stuff for modifications or getting more into the vehicle, make sure you subscribe. We have a ton of stuff on Focus ST on our channel already, and we plan on doing a lot more, so join us. We don't hardly ever talk about basic maintenance. It's not really a fun topic, but it's an essential topic. Now, this video is probably for very novice modifiers or anybody who just wants to get their hands dirty on their car. It's a great start, honestly. I mean, installing an intake is a great start too, right? But this is something that you're going to do over and over and over again, and it's required. So you can pay somebody to do it. It's not expensive to do that either, but if you want to take some pride in your vehicle and you want to know it was done right and you want to know what kind of fluid is in there, you know, this is for you. This is a great stepping stone into, hey, I got my hands dirty, I am working on my car. So a lot of people don't do their own transmission fluid changes. So there's probably just some little things that you didn't know how to do it, and we're going to show you how to do that. The third thing is spark plugs. That's super important as well, because your spark plugs wear out and they become ineffective. That could hurt your power, that could hurt your efficiency, that could cause engine problems, it could cause check engine lights. If you're modifying and you're tuned and you're raising the boost and you're advancing ignition and all that good stuff, I wouldn't say you need to do it every oil change. I would say maybe every 10,000 miles, unless your spark plugs are showing signs of weakness or you know, some sort of problems with them. So we're going to show you how to install those as well and show you how to gap them. So yeah, it's a pretty easy process, all this stuff, but hopefully this helps you. What you need to do this, besides the oil and the components themselves, are an oil funnel right here. You need a pump of some sort to get the transmission fluid into the case, which we'll go over shortly. For the spark plugs, you need a spark plug socket, which has a rubber insert or magnet to pull the spark plugs out of the engine, because you cannot reach down in there. You need a set of either feeler gauges or like the coin style gap tool where you can measure the gap of the spark plug. I like feeler gauges better. They're just easier to use. Gloves, like these rubber or nitrile gloves. You'll probably go through a couple sets. These are super handy. And some paper towels. It gets a little messy from time to time. So make sure you have some paper towels with you. Otherwise, the Focus ST in particular takes 5.7 quarts, so you'll need 6 quarts of oil. You'll need a new oil filter. You can take your pick from oil filters. I've seen videos on oil filter differences, and there's hardly, besides construction, as far as the performance of them, you're going to find that they're all very, very similar. But you know, we sell pretty good stuff and OEM stuff, and then 2 quarts of transmission fluid is what you need for the ST. Now, the ST requires 5W30 for the engine oil, and it requires you to use Ford Motorcraft gear lube, which they don't really tell you what the heck it is, but it's GL5 or higher is what is required, which this Schaeffer's is. This is 75W90 gear oil, which is, they're all going to be really, really similar. You're going to find 85, 80 to 90, 75 to 90. They're all going to be really close. 75W90 is fine in the ST, or you can use the Ford Motorcraft. It's completely up to you. And that's about all you need. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on our basic maintenance video. Otherwise, let's get started. First, start by taking off the 2 panels that are underneath the engine. You'll have this long, thin plastic piece, and then this kind of felt or soft under tray. those two pieces. This is the drain plug. It's a 15mm bolt head. It does not have any copper sealing washers or anything like that. It's just the bolt. So we'll go ahead and take this out. What I like to do is, before you have a drain pan underneath here, just go ahead and crack it loose, just like that. No oil is gonna come out. Move your drain pan underneath like that, and then just use your fingers. Hold the bolt in there as it comes off. You'll see it start to drip, so you know you're right there. And then once you know the threads are completely out, just go ahead and pull it out like that. This is obviously, a lot of you guys are gonna be doing this on the ground too. You know, it's the same thing. Just pull it out and let it start draining in one spot. Make sure your drain pan is all the way underneath the bolt hole. It'll start just dripping straight down from the pan. And just let it drip all the way out until you see only drips left. Once the oil is done draining, go ahead and snug this up. There is a torque spec from Ford for this. I don't know what it is, but go ahead and just twist it until it stops, and then go about half turn. It does not need to be cranked on there. Don't crank it on there. You're doing that on an aluminum oil pan. You don't want it to strip the threads. So just get it nice and snug. It's a perfect seal. And then you'll move over to the oil filter. Oil filter is right here in the front side of, right above the oil pan. It's technically connected to oil filter housing on the engine. So you'll go ahead and move to the front. Get yourself a oil filter removal tool. If you have something that doesn't have like a nut that you can grab onto with a socket on the end, which most oil filters don't, you can use something like this that kind of grabs onto it. You put an extension, 3/8 inch extension in here, and grab onto it and twist. And you really just need to break it loose, and then you can get the rest with your hand. You're gonna finish taking it off with your hand anyway. So just crack it loose and then unscrew it with your hand. Let it drip a little bit, just so there's less oil in there when you're taking it off. And then fully take it off. Let that oil just drip out of there. Go ahead and clean off the remainder of the dripping oil off the oil pan and off the filter housing up here. You just want to make sure to have a nice, clean, smooth surface. It is a good idea to use these blue rags or anything that doesn't have any dust or kind of lint that comes off of it. Take your oil filter, take your first quart of oil, go ahead and pour it in the center. You just want to fill that cavity inside of there with enough oil. You don't need it to get like all the way to the top. Just soak that thing in there. Take a little bit of oil from the top, lube up the sealing surface of the oil filter, and then just go ahead and put it on the car. So as you're twisting it on, you know, honestly with these things, if you got a good grip on it, all you need to do is just get it really, really snug with your hand. You know, if you don't have a strong grip, hit it with a tool. It does not need to be torqued down very hard at all. That rubber squishes nicely against the housing and it's sealed, it's good to go. At this point, put your lower engine panel back on and that front plastic strip back on, and then you can get out from underneath the car and go fill her with oil. This one has a traditional oil cap. Some cars have a 710 oil cap. Either one, you remove it with your hands, like so. Put the oil funnel on top of there. Get your first quart of oil. Pour that sucker in there. On the 6th quart of oil, like I said earlier, you're only pouring 5.7 quarts in, so it doesn't need to be perfect, dead on 5.7 quarts, but what you want to do on your last quart, or what I do, so you pour about half of, or a little bit more than half of the last bottle in and just stop from there. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the oil cap on, start the engine up, let it cycle some oil through, and then you use the dipstick to check the level. That way you can always add more. It's a lot harder to take out oil in increments than it is to put it in. So just pour in about half and then do your dipstick measurement. There are 2 holes in the dipstick, and the bottom half is a bunch of cross marks there. Basically, the oil needs to be about in the middle of the 2 holes. After you've run the engine for just a few seconds, maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you're gonna take your dipstick out. I clean it off completely first. And in reality, you probably need to let it sit for about, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, just so that all the oil drains down to the pan so you get an accurate measurement. So once you do that, go ahead and take it out, and you can see it's still draining. So we're gonna let it sit for just another couple minutes. It's been about 5 minutes now, so we're gonna go ahead and check it again. Let me wipe that clean real quick. All right, perfect. So as you can see, once you take it out, wipe it clean real quick, dip it one time really quick again, and you can see where the dryness starts to take place. It's dead in the middle. So I kind of nailed that one. I poured in more than half, so I kind of nailed that one. But you know, if it was below halfway towards the bottom hole on the dipstick, maybe just pour a little bit more in there and you'd be good to go. Remeasure it again if you want, just to make sure. But you're gonna be pretty close as long as you're, you know, about 2/3, 3/4 of that bottle, you'll be pretty close. So our camera guy keeps bugging me about something, and I wanted to address it with you right now. I filled the oil filter with oil. You don't have to do that, okay? You don't have to, but I do, so whatever. We're gonna transition to the underside of the vehicle again to do the transmission fluid now, but if you're doing multiple jobs, make sure that you do one at a time with fluids. That's just kind of my philosophy, my habit. The last thing you want to do is start up an engine without one of those fluids in there or without a drain plug installed. Obviously, you would know by that time before you started it that the drain plug was out, but make sure you just do one full job at a time before you switch to the next job. I'm going to start by telling you where we're working now because it's not quite as obvious as the engine oil. So we're on the driver's side of the car right now. And if you look just right by, you know, this subframe area, you can see this plug right here is the drain plug. And then if you go, you know, maybe 4 or 5 inches up directly to the right of where the axle goes into the transmission, there's another plug. That's the fill plug. So we're gonna start by opening up the fill plug first so that we can gain access to it while this isn't dripping. And then we'll start to drain it by cracking loose the drain plug. Okay, we have the fill plug removed. It drips just a little bit. It should just drip a little bit. It should be just sitting right at that fill hole. And actually that brings up a good point. How much do you put in? You put in as much as it takes to just barely start to drip out of that hole. And once it's done dripping out of that hole, then you can close the fill, plug the fill hole, and then you're done. So there is an exact amount, and it's like 1.75 liters or quarts, I think, which is why you need 2 of these. But you just fill it up until it drips out of the fill hole. Once it's done dripping, plug it, and you're done. But let's go ahead and drain the old oil out of here right now. While this is draining, I know that we're gonna get some questions about how often should you do your transmission fluid change. It is in the manual, so you can read about it. But Ford defines 2 different intervals to change your fluid at. Under normal conditions, I want to say that they require you to change it at 100K. So that's obviously a long time to go on some transmission fluid. Again, under normal circumstances. So a lot of you guys that are watching this video, you're modding your cars, blasting down the highway, going to the tracks on Wednesday night. Maybe you want to do a track day here and there, 1 or 2 every year. If you're doing that, it's wearing out the oil more. There's 2 things that require you to change the oil really, and that's heat, because heat breaks down the ability for the oil to lubricate properly, and time. It gets too old and it breaks down over time. So, you know, under extreme conditions, Ford says that you should change it, I want to say at 60,000 miles if I recall correctly. But either way, again, if you're tracking your car, oil, I look at oil as cheap insurance. You know, it really doesn't cost a whole lot, especially if you're doing it yourself. We're literally spending a few minutes here draining oil and putting more oil in. It's not that expensive at the end of the day. If you are going to have your car for a long time and you are going to track it and abuse it and have fun with it, it's cheap insurance. I would say, like me personally, daily driving a car, beating the heck out of it, having fun, I'd probably go every like 40K, 30K on the transmission fluid changes. If you're racing, why not change it almost, you know, every 2-3 times out if you're actually racing your car. If you're racing your car, you're probably not watching this video though. So 30 to 40,000 miles is plenty of time to go in between transmission fluid changes. This is the fluid pump that we're using. This attaches to the bottle itself. So open up the bottle, put the fluid pump on top, and you can see, you can start to pump it. And obviously it just moves its way through the tube. So we're going to put the tube inside of the fill hole and just pump this whole thing into it. We're gonna need plenty more than one. So you can just pump, and it's kind of inconvenient, to be honest. You gotta sit here and pump it while your hands are in the air, while, you know, if you're on the ground, you know, you're holding it, pumping it. So it's kind of inconvenient, but this gets the job done. All wrapped up with our trans fluid fill. So fill hole plug is tightened. It's pretty simple work there, even though it's very easy to make a mess, which we did. Anyway, put your lower panels back on, and we'll lower the car, and then we'll do spark plugs to finish this bad boy up. Changing the spark plugs out is a pretty easy job, especially on the Focus ST, where they are accessible from the top, unlike a dumb Subaru. I have one, it's okay. But the coil packs right here are what you're gonna remove. So each one of these cylinders has a coil pack on top, and then all the 8mm bolts are accessible right here. Might have to get in here a little bit with a wrench because of this pipe, but however you need to access them, go ahead and do that. One thing you need to make sure you are careful about is each one of these coils in particular are not cylinder specific, but this part of the harness is cylinder specific. It would be very difficult to screw this up, but make sure that each one of these plugs, it's easiest if you just leave them on the plug and then pull them out and just lay them in the same order that you're taking them off. These need to go back in the same location. There we go. Through the valve cover, we have the access to the spark plugs. So we just get an extension, spark plug socket, stick it down in there and take it off. The densos that we pulled out of here, they all look pretty consistent. The ground electrode and the insulation on all of them are basically the exact same color, super consistent, light brown-ish color, kind of gray brown. So that's good. You want to be careful if there's anything wet on there, or you know, maybe some insulation that's super dark, or if anything's broken or cracked. You know, sometimes you'll have a cracked plug and just be glad that you found it and took it out. But you know, if the insulation cracks and comes off in the cylinder, that's a problem. If the ground electrode is broken, that's a huge problem. You probably might have some damage in your engine, but you know, you're not going to see that kind of stuff on any normal circumstance. So take a look at the plugs, just make sure there's nothing wrong with them. grab your new plugs, and let's gap them now. The NGKs are right here that we are using. The NGK LTR 7iX-11s, those are one-step colder plugs for the car. These come gapped pretty big, and by gap, if you don't know already, the center electrode, which is the metal piece coming straight out of the body of the plug, sitting underneath the ground electrode, which is the kind of the L-shaped or a half U-shaped part coming out of the side of the threads. The space between those two things is the gap. The Focus ST calls for like a 32 thousandths, if I'm not mistaken, stock gap. These come gapped quite a bit more than that, so you have to gap this plug in particular. Denso plugs you don't have to gap, but we like using the NGKs. We've had a lot of success with these. Probably the best plug that we've used for the car and our customers as well. So we have this pretty handy torque solution gapper tool, and you just put the spark plug, thread it into the bottom of here, enough so that you can thread the top part of the body onto it and squeeze that ground electrode down towards the center electrode. Now this is where you also need your feeler gauge. This is going to answer a lot of questions for people that are at this point in the video. What do I gap my plugs to? You know, if you're stock, you could probably get away with 32 thousandths, 30 thousandths maybe. 28 thousandths is typically what we suggest for any car with a stock turbo. Even probably Power Max would be okay. 28 thousandths if you're tuned, running a little bit more boost. And that way, you know, you close up that gap, close up that distance that the spark has to travel to get to the other side. You want to make it so that it doesn't need too much energy, because that energy can be, that, you know, you can get spark blowout, as they call it, and it's basically not enough energy for that spark to reach the other side. So we're going to gap these to 28 thousandths because we have a Power Max and we're tuned. So 28 thousandths is what we're going for. If you have a big turbo, you know, 25, 26 thousandths is pretty common, but sometimes you'll just have to adjust it based on what's happening with the car. If it starts to have blowout and it feels like a misfire once you hit a certain RPM, you might have to close the gap a little bit. The feeler gauge has a lot of different slides on it. The biggest one on our set of feeler gauges is 25 thousandths of an inch. So obviously that's not big enough to fit between the gap that you want, to find the gap that you want. So what you do is you find the 3 thousandths slide, which is super flimsy. It's 3 thousandths thick, 3 thousandths of an inch thick, and you combine the two and slide it into the gap. So I know it's a pretty big gap from the start, so I'm just going to go ahead and press it down a little bit and squeeze that in, and then come back out, put your feeler gauge in there. Okay, it slid in fairly easily, so I need to tighten it up a little bit more. Okay, that won't slide in at all, or just barely did. And that's actually what you want. You want it to just barely cruise in there with a little bit of resistance, and then that's good. Once you're done gapping, go ahead and take your spark plug, put it into the socket first. Spark plug socket grabs it, obviously, so it doesn't come out, and then just go screw it into the cylinder. Now you want to, obviously there's a lot of threads, so it takes a while to thread in there, but we've seen a lot of people make the mistake of over tightening their spark plugs, and you know, you can crack a cylinder head that way. So you do not want to over tighten this. You want to get it to the point where it kind of just stops naturally with a little bit of pressure, and then just snug it just like that. That's all it needs. When you are putting in your spark plugs, put them in dry. We get a lot of people asking, do you need anti-seize? You don't need anti-seize on the spark plug. There you have it. Everything is done. That is a wrap. Congratulations, you have successfully installed spark plugs and changed your fluids. We appreciate you watching. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you have any other questions, just let us know. You know, after you're done with this, go ahead and fire it up. Make sure everything is running okay. Just do your double checks. Make sure everything's tight. Do a once over, and you're good to go. So Yeah, like and subscribe. You know the drill. Do it now. It's the end of the video. Most of you aren't watching, so I can say it like that. Catch you on the next one.